Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're jumping back into Dark Web, and for this one we're pulling things from Amazing Spider-Man issue 15, as well as Dark Web Miss Marvel issue 1, Dark Web Mary Jane and Black Cat issue 1, and Dark Web X-Men issue 1. Since to me they all kind of come together as one issue anyway. But with that said, let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so at this point when we jump back in, Madelines Plan's attack on New York has possessed nearly every inanimate item you can think of, including toilets. And for Madelines Plan, of course, with her doing this, there's a bit of revenge involved, but in the full scope, possessing New York with all of these demons from Limbo is only a distraction so that her and Ben Reilly can carry out the real plan. But even with this distraction taking place, a lot of crazy messed up things are going on, like Santa getting eaten by a huge Christmas tree right in front of all of the kids at the Rockefeller Center. And even though Spider-Man is able to help the X-Men with saving the bystanders in this area, it doesn't change the fact that people saw that happen. But Peter comforts a nearby kid by telling him that, hey, we all saw it happen. But it's okay, because Santa's a mutant, and the X-Men are gonna resurrect him in their little Keebler treehouse. But after this, Peter then gets a broken up message from Norman Osborn, who at this time is catching some serious fade from Ben Reilly. But Peter doesn't get all the details, all he knows is that Norman's in trouble, so he just takes off full speed to give Norman some help. But with Peter making his way to help Norman by himself, there's a few things that Peter is unaware of, with one of those things being a huge thing, and that's Eddie Brock, who at this point in time has had 20 years of character development taken from him by Madelines Plan. And for anyone who's just jumping in now, you'll find more of the details of how this happened between Venom issue 13 and Dark Web issue 1. But long story short, just know that Madelines Plan had manipulated Eddie's mind to relieve him from worrying about Dylan so that Eddie could instead help her. But at this time, with Eddie going back to the quote-unquote dumb Venom phase and he's searching for Spider-Man throughout this chaotic demon-possessed New York, we do still get a moment that shows us, even with Eddie searching for Spider-Man to eat his brains, that there's still a bit of the sensible, caring, lethal protector that's still there. Because with all these items that are coming to life, we then see a baby carriage that comes to life and tries to eat the kid. And even with this happening, Eddie takes a moment of his time to save the baby, give it a kiss, and then go on about his way to eat Spider-Man's brains. Which right there just lets us know that Eddie isn't in full chaos mode, but rather is more of the case of him only going after Spider-Man. Which again, as we're told, is not part of Madelines' plan, of which the other details we're just kind of figuring out as we go along. Because all we truly know going into this is that ultimately she's going after Jean Grey and Ben is going after Peter. But at this time we then make our way back to Ben, who at this point has already beat the brakes off of Norman Osborn. And at this point, Peter's made his way here, and this is what he sees, like he just missed the baptism. But also for Peter, this is his first time seeing Ben since Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, Issue 93, Legacy Issue 894. Because when Peter saw Ben fall in the substation at the Beyond building, to only then get covered with all the green quantum shifting polymer, in that final explosion, it looked like Ben had died. But for Peter, with him seeing Ben now, he tells him that he knew deep down inside that Ben was still alive, like he could feel it. But of course for Ben, he's not trying to hear all that noise, because before he was asking Peter for the memories back, and now he's not asking anymore because he plans to take them. And for Ben at this point, it's not something that he's trying to keep a secret, because he lets Peter know that he's part of the reason that all this craziness is going on. And of course, in response, Peter lets Ben know that he can't just let him do this. And he's sorry about what happened to Ben, but he just can't let all of this continue. But even with Peter saying this, Ben's not worried about Peter stopping him anytime soon. Because mid-conversation, Venom then dives in, and Ben knew that Peter's spider sense wasn't gonna go off, and that this would be the perfect opportunity for Ben to just go on about his way, and continue with the plans that him and Madelines Plan have set out to execute. But so now when this happens, and Eddie gets here, Peter's not aware of everything that Eddie's been going through, whether it's throughout the most recent Venom series, with Eddie time traveling and turning into Meridius, or better yet being in the process of going through a number of identities and then becoming Meridius, let alone the more recent situation with Madelines Plan that has reverted him back to old school Venom, which is really more like the Eddie we knew 30 years ago. And I said 20 earlier, but it's more like 25, 30. But again, like I said before, I believe that this was just done to simplify things and include Venom, who will have more significant moments and do so without complicating the larger story that he's involved in at the moment. And we'll see how that unfolds later on in Dark Web. But also at this time, at Oscorp, you got Kamala Khan, who as of recently has been working her internship for Norman Osborn, and she was also at the Oscorp building when this went down. And for Kamala, we find in Dark Web Ms. Marvel issue 1 that she had nearly had to reveal her identity to another intern who had been attacked by a microscope that just came to life. Poor fella, but fortunately he didn't see her change because he got knocked out. Unfortunately for this guy, Arjun, I believe his name was, this happened right in the middle of him asking Kamala on a date, and it sounded like she was about to say no, so there's that. But this eventually takes Kamala outside, and it's here where she runs into Chasm. And through the course of this, she's put together enough to know that this is the guy who beat up her boss, Norman Osborn. But with her making her attempt to stop Chasm, she doesn't so much as get one hit in before he can make a barrier spell and send her straight to Limbo. And for Ms. Marvel, that's pretty much where her tie-in goes. But as this continues, we come to find out that Ben Reilly's not finished doing his rounds, because after sending Ms. Marvel to Limbo, we then see him pay J. Jonah Jameson a visit. And from the look of things, Jameson's the next one to make that trip down under. But then when we head over to Dark Web, X-Men issue 1, we find that after the New York attack, Cyclops, Magik, Jean, and Havoc make their way to Limbo in order to confront Madeline Pryor, only to find that when they got there, it was a trap, with the 4 of them quickly being confronted by sleep demons and soon after taken prisoner by Madeline Pryor, to where from there she put both Jean and Illyana in a form of stasis with a powerful spell. And then with Havoc and Cyclops, Havoc woke up looking extra zesty, telling Cyclops that he doesn't know what happened, he just woke up like this. And for a moment, the two of them begin to argue because Cyclops, he wants to just get Jean, Magik, and go home. While on the other hand, Havoc's like, no, we should stick around and fight. But then suddenly, the two of them are knocked out by Madeline Pryor, who tells them that she's gonna get everything that she wants, and the two of these guys can watch. Which for a moment had me thinking like, okay, what exactly does Madeline want? Because we know her and Emma are good for taking somebody man. Which also reminds me that we gotta talk about the Mary Jane Black Cat tie-in, because for these two, when everything popped off, Felicia made her way to find Mary Jane, and on her way there, fighting off a bunch of newspapers, she admits to herself that she feels the need to look after Mary Jane just to make sure that she's okay. And even though Felicia doesn't really want to per se, she admits that she still needs to because MJ means a lot to Peter. And even though recently Felicia told MJ that she doesn't have feelings for Peter anymore, she admits to herself that that's a lie. And if for no other reason, she needs to look out for MJ because Peter needs her. But to Felicia's surprise, when she does catch up with MJ, she finds that MJ is not as defenseless as she thought, because now she has her own powers. And I mean, they're really not that reliable, because when she activates her powers, it's literally a gamble for the type of power that she gets. So sometimes it works out great, other times not so much. But through the course of this, Felicia and MJ end up finding that the power that is coming from Limbo, or at least the way that the power is traveling from Earthrealm, is a two-way street. But this then causes Felicia and MJ to head down to Limbo, to where when they arrive, they land right before Belasco, the previous ruler of Limbo prior to Magik. But just after this, we then go back to Peter going up against Venom. And even with Peter noticing that Eddie's a bit, dumber, Peter notices with him trying to go toe-to-toe with Eddie, he just can't hang with him. And for a moment, it causes Peter to think that maybe he relies on his spider senses a bit too much, which, as we know, isn't the first time he thought that. But for a moment, it has me thinking here, like, had he been practicing the way of the spider, then he might have been doing a little bit better. And on top of that, his spider glider bug isn't helping him out too much. So for that reason, Peter just comes to the point where he has to run. But with Peter hightailing it and getting up out of there, like, he pretty much has a plan that he's put together. And he does so by stealing a couple items from a newsstand that, in his defense, it was sentient, so it's not really like he could have paid for it if he tried to. But what Peter ends up doing is using a lighter that he had taken and setting what appears to be a manga book on fire in order to upset a bunch of these Christmas trees who are talking at a high pitch and getting them to scream. And with getting them to scream, this high pitch would of course cause Eddie to go unstable, which from there gave Peter the opportunity to just knock Eddie out. And I'm sure with seeing this that a lot of people were thinking the same thing that I was, and it's kind of like, hey, if Eddie's just a time-traveling pile of goo, then there shouldn't be an Eddie inside of the symbiote. And I mean, with how this is done, Peter does mention that Eddie looks kind of plastic and fake, which to me kind of feels like something that was rewritten and added later. But nonetheless, I appreciate that it was at least addressed, because there would have been a lot of questions if Eddie was physically under the symbiote. But with Peter defeating Eddie, then Madeline Pryor and Hollow's Eve show up. And when they do, Peter kind of has a moment where he looks at Madeline and he tells her that, wow, she really does look like Jean. And I mean, it's kind of one of those things to where, yeah, Peter, you should kind of know how this works when it comes to clones. Because in his case, he's had his own treacherous little twins who will go up and down that road as well. But quickly Madeline tells Peter that first, for one, he won't mention Jean's name or let anyone else know that she's up to her secret plan, which right there kinda has me like, well, you should have told Ben that, cause he out here letting everybody know. But then Madeline goes on to say that Eddie is part of this quote unquote secret plan, as she then takes Eddie away using those demon possessed mailboxes that I believe that we saw back in Free Comic Book Day. But then in the middle of this conversation, Ben shows up and he drops down with the old, "Hello, Peter," because now it's time for Ben and Peter to go at it. And with us seeing this, maybe, just maybe, we'll see what new fight moves Ben has now that he's Chasm. And I mean, that's a maybe, strong maybe. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below to where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.